Yeah, got one room completely down now. So now we got for the granddaughters where they can sleep. Now we got to get for the daughters. And he works on the she I ran through this before. But he oversees that he was telling me about Russia and the bear.
If it's not, it should be in a good direction.
Absolutely.
Stay prayed up.
Amen. So we should go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got a couple of minutes before we'll get ready to bring our meeting to order, just so everyone get in position. Miss the city clerk. Hey, Miss, that's your question. I'm trying to figure out if James Whitmore wants to speak. I'm trying to figure out how would I.
We'll let you know.
Oh, you okay? Oh, you'll let me know. Okay, got you.
I'm more inclined.
You ready, Mr. City Manager? Ladies and gentlemen, left the gavel. We'll bring our meeting to order. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much again for coming to the City Council workshop for the May 23rd meeting. At this point, Ms. City Clerk, could you just call the roll for record purposes?
Yes. Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Hattie Portis Jones.
Present.
Honorable Linda J. Davis.
Present.
Honorable Alex Heath.
Present.
The Honorable Ulysses Smallwood.
Absent.
Honorable Pat Palin.
Present.
Honorable James Whitmore.
Present.
Okay, gotcha. It threw me in the legs, two of them. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, what we're gonna do, Mr. City Manager, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you for our first presentation.
Good evening. Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. We have one presentation on our work session agenda for this evening. It is a presentation by GFL Greens for Life Environmental, sponsored by our Utilities Department. And I will turn it over to the staff from GFL to make their presentation. We ask that you keep that presentation to 10 minutes, followed by a question and answer.
Mayor, Council, good evening, staff, good evening. Thank you for letting us have this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Eric Bergen. I am the Regional Vice President for GFL in Georgia. With me is Bettini Robinson. She's our Regional Engineer for GFL. As you may know, as some of you do, but we also currently service the city in residential and recycling services and yard waste services as well. First thing I want to just talk about tonight is just the fact that you might have been aware, I think you all are, that we are changing the service day to Tuesdays, effective the week of June 6th. I can assure you, this is going to be a good thing, something that we should have done a long time ago, but it's going to make our service much more reliable. We'll also have more staff, more trucks on the street on Tuesdays to make sure that we do not miss anything, which has been a problem in the past. I know we're slowly getting better. I do appreciate your patience, but I think it's going to be a huge step forward to make our service superior every Tuesday. So that's the first thing. We have postcards going out to all the residents, phone blast. We're going to be doing tie-on to all of the trash cans to make sure that everybody's aware of the service day change. So it should go off without a hitch, and we can pick anybody up the next day if we did miss them. So I think the first 2 weeks might be a little bit different for everybody, but it should be really good in the end. So I appreciate your patience and willing to let us do that. it's very important for us to be able to do that to make our service absolutely impeccable. So thank you. The next issue we'd like to talk about, we also run the construction and demolition disposal site here in Fairburn. And we're here tonight to ask you to consider letting us change an ordinance to repurpose some land that is currently at the site. Bettini's going to speak on that. I think you all have the presentation. If not, I can bring copies up to you. But what we're asking to do is repurpose an ordinance that you have that would allow us to repurpose a part of the construction demolition site to allow us to continue to expand a little bit and add some life to the construction site that would be beneficial both to us, of course, but the city as well. I'll let Bettini get up and she can answer any of the engineering questions you might have and any questions after that as well.
Hi, how are you all?
Okay.
So, based on the presentation, if you can scroll, so this is just a brief history to say for the safeguard facility. It's been in operation since 1999, and so far we really do have a good environmental compliance, 95% average with Georgia EPD, and we are expecting the facility to close 2024. And so based on what Eric has mentioned, we have 19 acres. It's currently within the property boundary. It's not outside any existing current footprint of the facility. And this 19 acres we would like to repurpose. In order to repurpose this area for a different use, the current city code does not allow for that. And so what we're here today is to propose to amend that language. And we have the current language listed and what we're proposing that language to be. And this would allow us to repurpose that 19 acres that's currently within the boundary and the footprint. It doesn't go outside of it. It's not acquiring any new land. It is currently within our boundaries. If you can go to the next slide, please. And this is just a rendering of, and we have a nice poster board as well, but this is a rendering of what the current area is. That's 105 acres, and then what the 19 acres that we are looking to repurpose. And again, this is still within our current footprint, our boundary of the current facility. Next slide, please. This is some of the benefits that Safeguard Facility has brought to the city. I'll let you all kind of go through that a little bit. It's just some of the different ones. One of the ones we're really proud of, the 67 acres of land that we provided to the county. Support for emergency response and cleanup, host fees that are provided as well. Next slide, please. And this is the future benefits. So again, we have closure early 2024. We have 19 acres that's within the current property boundary that we would like to repurpose. Currently, what that property is being used for is stockpiling of soils and other different material. So it's not like wildlife refuge or anything. It's used for soil stockpile, and we're just wanting to repurpose that. And so if we can repurpose that and get that amendment to the code, what we're showing here is that it'll extend the life to 2027, and this is the additional that we would like to bring to the city from that repurposing. And so we have an additional 3 years of host fees, continued donations to local business awards, any type of sponsorships, and then continuing the support of the emergency response cleanup. So that concludes that, and so does anyone have any questions? We did provide a fact sheet that has some questions as well with some answers, more from a safety environmental side, any types of improvements to the city, to GFL its own, and that safeguard facility since taken over. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
It seems like, and this has been years ago when y'all first opened up, but it seems like that it was read in there that the garbage or whatever you want to call it would not reach above the trees, that you couldn't basically see it, the rubbish from the roadway, because the trees would be up tall enough to conceal all of that. And I'm seeing that we've got a golf course community, right along the same side, the same road, and you look over there and you can see the debris piled up just everywhere above the tree line. So is that something that I'm incorrect about, or is that something that was supposed to have been followed?
So the way that the final grade of the, I guess the hill we'll call it, that goes to a closure process where EPD will come out and inspect it and say whether or not we are to the proper foot that we're supposed to be at. So it's possible that we are within the actual permitted space that we're supposed to be in, but maybe we didn't anticipate the trees to not grow as tall, and that could be something that we can look, and so if we do get
Okay.
the code variance and we do add more trees, because we will,
Yes.
we can consider either different trees or a modification where eventually we'll cut the tops off and get
Right.
it to a proper level, and that could help it as well.
Well, I know, you know, throughout these years, I used to police here, and every now and then you would get an odor. It would smell like a mildew odor, so to
Okay.
speak. And but I haven't noticed that lately. So I just want to say I appreciate the fact that y'all are on top of that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we
Thank you.
take those complaints serious, and whether they come from EPD or a community member, we do
Right.
evaluate and assess those. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other? Go
Mayor?
ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. I really want to ask this question of Director of Planning and Zoning, Ms. Peaks. What impact will this proposed change on our zoning ordinance affect in the future if we do this, if we are considering this change?
Well, like they just said, the amendment will have to come before council. It'll go to planning commission, and then it'll come to city council for final approval. So there will have to be a complete amendment to the use permit standards for landfill and transfer stations. So that's first thing that needs to happen. And then, because I think the property is already zoned M2, so the zoning is there. So it would be an application that they will have to file that will have to go through the public hearing process before they would be able to expand.
Okay, that's it.
And a text amendment. So it's two processes, a text amendment and a use permit to allow the expansion.
Okay, will that defeat the purpose that we were trying when we actually did the zoning ordinance for no expansion or anything for a landfill?
Yes, I think it was 2020, this came before Planning Commission and City Council, a text amendment and a use permit for the expansion. And staff's opinion was that when this was, the landfill was annexed into the city of Fairburn, and those regulations were put in place so that no new or existing landfill can expand. So there would be some changes to what the original intent was when the ordinance was created.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Peaks.
Mr. Whitmore has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, my question is not for staff. My question is actually for GFL. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to follow up on the question that my colleague, Mr. Heath, asked, and that would be, what is the stated height, the maximum height that your mounds can be?
I do not have that number. I would have to get back to you by taking a look at what the permit says, because within the permit, you can build it to a certain height, but during the actual inspection, it does have to be a certain height, and there is an opportunity to actually, I want to call it cutting it off, but there's an opportunity to bring it back down. And so if that is an issue, that is something that can be discussed and actually brought back down. But the actual number, I would have to go into the permit and take a look and get back to you on that.
Okay, if you would provide that information to our city administrator, and he'll make sure that mayor and council has that. Also, in light of that, when you're talking about knocking it down,
Yes.
if you actually go out into the community of the fairways of Durham Lakes, and you actually look at it, and you look at it from my front door, it well exceeds any height level of any tree imaginable. So That was the purpose for my question, number one. But then when you said that you could knock it down, does that mean you're going to dig up what you already have? Because how can you impact that down even further?
Yeah, so over time, there is going to be some compaction that is going to take place over time that is going to drop it down. But when I mean that you can come back up and you can level it off, when I say that, that is exactly what it is. You come back up and you remove that trash. So you'll take that cover off, you'll remove that trash, but I want to make it clear that once you do that, now you need somewhere to put that trash that you have removed it. So you do need to have some place to put it at. So what they do is they forecast the volumes and what they expect to bring in. And so when you look at the 2024 and the volumes that they are collecting, and then you consider if we do knock that top down because it's more aesthetic pleasing, and perhaps it does go over. It shouldn't though. We do take pride in going out there and measuring each time we're going out there and layering the trash. There's measurements that go into place so we know how to build. So if we do go out there and do that, we do need some place to put it. And so if we put it in the current area that we have in that cell, as they call it, where we can put that trash, that is going to have impact on the volumes that we are currently taking in. And that could decrease the life that we have left. So it is doable. There's a cost associated to it. However, from an aesthetic, pleasing environment, that is something that we can discuss and take a look at actually doing.
So you just mentioned something that is enlightening to me, and that is when you said that if the height is greater than what is authorized, okay, you can come back and extract from that cell, but then you have to have some place to put it. So now my question would be more direct in asking you that if you know what that height is, have you already exceeded that? Because based on what I can see from my front door, you've exceeded it.
I will take a look because I know that the visuals are sometimes not exactly what it is when you're on site, but I will get you the numbers and take a look at what it says we're permitted, and then we would keep documentation to say where we are now. So we would have that documentation for you.
Okay.
But yes,
So
that is a possibility, but the way that we operate and we do fill those cells, we have engineers, consultants that come in, and at each grade they tell us what we can go up to based on what we're permitted for. So there shouldn't be a time that we are exceeding, but if there is, it is before capping, it's before closures, before vegetation is put on, and there is that opportunity. But that is an if. I want to point that out. That is a possibility, but we do our best to not allow that to happen. But I can get you those numbers and tell you what the permit says and where we're currently at on that hill.
That would be great, and I
You're
hope
welcome.
I'm not too alarmed, because by you saying if, not once, not twice, but a couple of times, that's alarming to me as a elected official, because this has been going on for some time now, and if you have not capped off those cells and you're still adding to it, which I see that you're doing on a daily basis from my front door, now I'm concerned about whether or not you reached your peak and you should be leveling off to close up that cell. And now the other concern would be if you exceed it and now you have to extract out of that cell, where are you going to put it? You're going to have to take it somewhere, but I don't think it's going to be here in the city of Fairburn.
Yes, and I want to explain when I say if, it's more of a, there's possibilities and there's potentials in any work that you do. And so I say if to say that if there's a miscalculation, if there's something, but that's only an if. But how we operate to not have an if. We operate to not go over or exceed anything. So when I say if, it's not a built into our operationals an if. It is we're permitted to this, just like environmental compliance, engineering, that has to go to Georgia EPD. They come out and they inspect that, so there's no room for error in this. So when I say if, it really is something just majorly happens and this error occurs, but we don't operate into that error. we have oversight from EPD, and that just doesn't allow, and that's just not how we operate.
All right. And the last comment that I would like to make, it's been some years now where I believe my colleague, Hattie Portis-Jones, and I, along with the city engineer, I'm not sure if anybody else is on council, that actually went with us to the top of the hill. But I would love to do that again with our city administrator and any other staff that would be willing to do so, because it's a different look from up top, looking back in the communities that can actually see that in comparison to looking out my front door and looking all the way up. But either way, you're going to see, or you're going to understand my meaning of why my concern is there. And that's why I would like to know what those caps are,
Okay.
so that we can really address it on a more equal playing field, if you will.
Yes, understood, and I will provide that information to you and work with our engineering group and Eric and get that scheduled for you to have that walk down.
Okay.
Thank you much.
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Porter-Jones. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes,
Ms. Jones.
thank you, Mayor. Yes, to follow up on the line of questioning by Councilman Whitmore, he asked the question, if you have to extract, where are you putting those items that you're extracting? And I didn't hear the answer to that question.
So it just goes into an open cell, or I call it a cell. It's pretty much looks like a bowl almost. And so it just goes back into an open cell where when you collect trash, where it gets placed at.
So is it on the same site?
Yes, it's on the same site. It's at the same location, the same facility. It's just in a more open area where you're currently collecting and putting the trash at. So it stays on that property boundary. It's not going anywhere else.
Okay.
It remains on site.
All right, thank you. Mhm.
Yeah, so we still have expanded, like, we still have a couple years left currently, right? So if we had to extract off, if that did happen, then what do you do? Just, it would take up some of that life expectancy that we currently have to fill out cells sooner than what was done. So
Okay.
it would definitely go on the same site.
All right, thank you. And relative to your requests for the 19 acres, to repurpose the 19 acres, please tell us what you have in mind for repurposing. I didn't hear the answer to that question either. How does that, you're repurposing it to do what different than what you're doing now?
Basically, what we're asking for is repurpose so we can continue the operation to give more life expectancy to the construction site.
All right, and with the 19 acres, why is it then that you need 3 more years before closure of the site?
So when you anticipate the volumes that are coming in, those 19 acres will allow for whatever estimated tonnage of waste to be placed in that area. So when Councilman Whitmore was talking about the kind of the slope or the hills, when you look at the permitted numbers, the volume that you're coming in, 19 acres, so some math in there, will get you 3 more years based on the expected tonnage of material that would be placed in that repurposed area.
And that's based off the current amount of tonnage that we're taking in as of today.
Well, when you came before us in, was it 2000?
I believe it was 2019. When
2019, yes. We had lengthy discussions about that, and in fact, we had many residents, neighbors of Councilman Whitmore, who complained a lot about the odor and the smell from the landfill. And I was surprised to learn, and quite frankly, elated to learn, that you were planning to close in 2024. Well, I'm really disappointed now and disheartened that if you are granted the 19 acres, that you now have you will be granted 3 more years. And I find that troubling because we really don't want landfills, in our area. It was annexed in at the time, but we saw light at the end of the tunnel because of the plant closure for 2024. So I just want to express that I really do have some concerns about you coming back to us requesting expansion again. And I question why you think the environment is different now than it was in 2019 when you made that request, because the issues are quite frankly the same. So can you respond to that?
So I can start us off. I wasn't around. I was in a sort of a different industry during that time, and I don't necessarily have the history of the individuals that came 2019. What I can say is that I manage the environmental, and I take complaints, odor complaints, animal, wildlife, whatever complaints that someone brings me, I take it very seriously. I don't live in the community, but I work in the community. I drive through the community, so your concerns are my concerns. And when it's odor or anything that the neighborhood is having, that's something that I would want to be addressed, and not just addressed to my standard, but something that's gonna make the community happy, because that's what you have to live, smell, and be around all day. So I would like to think that different management, different experience, and different processes and just morals and standards that we have, or at least myself for sure, when I come to GFL, is something that I can assure you is gonna make some of the issues and concerns very different, even though the same thing that we're coming to you today was brought to you today. It is with different individuals and kind of what we want to bring to the table for you all.
What new technology and or processes that you have available to you now to help in mitigating any environmental issues, the smell, the height issues, the potential burning and fire, because this community also has experienced a landfill that's just a little further down the road that has been closed for quite some time, but has continued to burn and create issues for the community.
One thing I would like to add is sometimes there's a little bit of confusion. Remember, this is a construction demolition site. So we only take construction and demolition debris. We take no MSW, which would be your household waste. So there's really no trash being put in. It's just construction debris, which has a lot less effect than what most people think a landfill does. So it is just a reminder, it is a construction demolition landfill, only taking construction debris.
And so some of the technology that we have is, so from an operational standpoint, is how you compact, is making sure you only accept construction and demolition material. That's your first line of defense. You have inspections that take place, so they're weekly inspections where someone is driving or walking around the landfill. Myself, when I come to the site, have my nose up looking to sniff out different odors or things that I don't believe should be there. You have these nasal, they're like this equipment, and it's like nasal guard or something, and you put those out around the facility and you try to determine where the potential odors are coming from. You also have these misters. I don't like the misters, but there are misters that can, it doesn't kind of bury the smell, but it collects with the molecules of the odor, and it drops it down. But the first line of defense is compaction, the type of waste, and inspections. And then if someone comes to us, we will evaluate and do other assessments to try to get the odor. We'll even add additional soil. That's like the Georgia EPD requirement, is compaction, add more layer on top to try and reduce the odors. But there are different technologies that we use. I'm sure there's other technologies out there, but those are the ones that we have used before.
All right, thank you. And I'd like to do the tour a second time again.
Okay,
So
yes. Will do.
I've got two questions, then Mr. Whitmore's got one final question. I want to give our next presentation at least 25 minutes to go over it.
Okay.
My quick question to you, and just is public record, so I can say I was actually one of the people that adamantly fought this in 2009, and so that's well documented as relates to us the city taking the vendor then to court to block that. Some of the concerns I had then are actually manifested, as you've heard from several questions. My question was going to be, if, let's say for the sake of argument, even if it was extended in year 2027 or whatever, my question is, once it closes, what happens with that? What happens with that partial with all the debris on it? What type of maintenance or what type is it just sit there with rats and rodents, or what happens?
So the way that capping or closure works is that there is a kind of engineered layer of material that goes over that trash, and then there's vegetation that goes on top of it as well. So there's certain vegetation that you put on it. You have your buffer areas. So there's trees of any sort that someone, would recommend if they want to put up, and that's kind of what you're speaking of, kind of that buffer, so it kind of, you can't see it in a sense is what that intent is. But it gets vegetated over, and so it should look like a grassy hill once it's complete. So no trash is exposed. There's inspections that take place internally and with Georgia EPD, and you cannot have any trash that is left uncovered, and they're very particular about that and the vegetation growth. Erosion as well, we make sure that there's no potential for erosion as well.
Okay, gotcha. And, well, my follow-up question was going to be strictly, and I'm not sure, the item, if you're writing down 675, Highway 675, is that that looks like Stone Mountain? Is that not a landfill? It
No, that area.
looks like it used to. Now, the one I'm aware that was on Moreland Avenue is the reference point I used to basically fight this one. I don't know if that was, the odor was just hellacious. But I'll come back. This item is going to come back one way or the other. I'll actually have a research done. I'm going to make sure the area I'm looking at, I can see them. I can see it right now as you're riding down Highway 675. But I'm going to let Mr. Whitmore go ahead, and then we'll wrap it up so we can get to our next president. Mr. Whitmore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to allow you to respond to one, but I will ask the 3 questions, and you can provide the other 2 answers to our city administrator. Number 1, I do understand that when you actually close it down, that it still is going to emit gases. And I asked this the last time you came before council, and I believe the person that responded was more or less caught off guard. But I would like for you to respond in writing the gases that are emitted from a construction dump site that you currently have. Number 2, I would like to hear the answer to this one. I know that you're working on a certain cell. How many cells do you currently have left before those cells are completed and closed down? And then the other question that you can respond to the city administrator, I heard you allude to in your opening statements about us changing the days. That's going to benefit our citizens in the city of Fairburn. But my question to you is in reference to the maintenance of your vehicles. Historically, you have had issues with hydraulic fluid and other things that were being left on the streets of Fairburn. And even when you were contacted, it was a long delay before we even received any positive responses from your organization to correct those things. So my concern is that I understand that you're going to a new day, but I just also would like to make sure that we have proper maintenance of those vehicles and they're not coming out onto our roadway and doing what they have done in the past. So if you can answer that one question for me and then provide narrative in a written format to our city administrator, sir.
Yeah, no, very good question, sir, and you're exactly right. It does sound like in the past, me and Bettini weren't here, was a different company then, but it sounds like in the past there was issues, and you were right, 100%. But we're making those changes, and I think that shows you just our plan to give better service, to make sure that our trucks are safer on the road. But maintenance has been an issue from what I've heard in the past, and there is a lack of response taking care of those issues. We've changed those things, and we're continuing to change those things. My dedication to this site and this community is 100%, and we're making the changes to make sure that we have the best trucks, the best plan to be able to get the trash up on a timely manner, no matter what's going on in the world today. And I think you'll see that starting on Tuesday, the week of June 6th. that we have more supervisors in the street. We have all of our trucks in the city of Fairburn at the same time, making sure that even if we do have a breakdown, I mean, these trucks are going to break down, and there's no excuse. The facts of the matter is, right now, it's hard to even get new trucks, but it's hard to get the parts for trucks, and that's why we're doing this, to make sure that we have the best trucks on the road in Fairburn at all time, to make sure that these issues don't happen. And if we do have an issue going forward, I can assure you, it's being taken care of immediately, and I think staff can agree with me. Since I've been on board, and the team that we have has been on board, we are Johnny on the spot. You have a problem, we're taking care of it right then. Not perfect, but we're going to get perfect, and I can assure you, it's only going to get better and better.
Okay.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
Mr. Phillips, could you please provide us with a report the end of June about how things are going with this one-day operation? And then secondly, please communicate to our residents the fact that you said if you don't pick up on Tuesday, that you're picking up on the next day. Surprised to hear that, because it's supposed to be all on Tuesday. But nonetheless, I understand that, you know, that there may be some issues that you pick up the next day, but please communicate to our residents that indeed will happen.
What I meant was maybe the first couple weeks for people that might not have gotten the postcard, might not have gotten the tie-on to their thing, might not have gotten the phone calls, because we're doing a lot of different ways to communicate. Over the next 2 weeks, there might be a few people that do not get picked up or did not know of the notice. We will definitely be back the next day. The minute they call and if they said they were missed, we will be back until everyone gets on the right schedule on that Tuesday. But I truly believe once we get everyone on the right schedule, you'll never have issues again.
All right, thank you.
So,
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem, for additional context, when Mr. Bergen and I first met, it was because I had taken an opportunity with the mayor to ride the city right-of-ways, and I was sorely disappointed. Right-of-ways did not look up to Fairburn standards, and so we met to have that discussion. That's kind of how our dialogue started. And from the very outset, we've made it very clear to GFL, and they have responded. We've made it very clear that service levels are simply not where they need to be, and that it's time to make a change, that we can see an improvement. We've got to make a decision in the fourth quarter of this year how to move forward with our services as it relates to trash and home trash service, and so it's an important time to see some improvement. With that said, we've had a series of meetings, and we've coordinated with them about educating to our residents about this route change that is pending. We've approved a lot of the materials that have been put together. Ms. Chris has been instrumental in working with them to shape our public education, making sure our residents know not only the change in route, but where cans should go, when you need to call for bulk trash pickup. And so that's an ongoing process. As you know, we brought on board a communications consultant who's also helping to shape that information. It's on social media, it's on the website. We had some information at the event on Friday. So we'll continue to do that on an ongoing basis. But I'll be very clear with you, as I have been with GFL, it's a very critical time. You know, service has to improve, and it has to improve quickly. And so we'll see what happens. We'll provide that report for you. I think they're very clear, and they know what that expectation is. I will tell you, at least initially, they have been responsive. They've met, and when we've called and when our staff has called to indicate that something's been missed, they've been on top of it. But it's a systemic issue. It's all over the city. And so we've got to solve it at that level. And so we have very frank and clear discussions about what our expectations are, and then we'll see what the service level is like moving forward. And so please know that we are acutely aware of that, as is GFL, and we expect to see some improvements. Also, Councilman Whitmore, thank you for your suggestion. I'd love to take a tour myself. I won't be dressed like this, but I'll put on some work boots and we can go out and walk the landfill and actually see what it looks like. And so they've made efforts to be responsive. I will acknowledge that. And so we'll see where things go from here.
Okay, and could you just include in your report to the complaints and the type of complaints you received over that period of time? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Our next presentation is going to be from our HR director. Mr. City Manager, you want to go ahead and
Yes.
introduce this subject matter?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to invite Ms. Champagne to come up to the podium. We are very excited and looking forward. We are in the process of moving forward with a class and comp study, which is sorely overdue to address some issues with staffing, with vacancy, with retention. What I will tell you, and then I'll stop and let our expert take it from here, is that the culture of work has changed dramatically over the last 2 to 3 years. And it's very important that we look at this. And in all honesty, even if there had been no pandemic, it's been probably since 2012, I understand, the last time this was done. And so it's a very significant need. We're fortunate that we have someone with Ms. Champagne's experience and expertise on board, and with that, I'll give way to her to talk about the class and comp study.
Good evening, Mayor,
Good evening.
honorable members of council. Thank you all so much for allowing me this opportunity just to briefly speak with you as it relates to our classification and our compensation study. We are actually really excited to have had an opportunity to select a vendor and have a vendor to be able to come in and really take a holistic, is what I call it, a holistic approach as it relates to salary equities here in the city, taking a look at all of our job descriptions, which really have not been reviewed from what I can tell since 2016. Looking at all of the central functions as it relates to those job descriptions, going out to market and comparing those jobs that are out there in market in comparison to what we do here. Really also looking at how we are organized here in the city and making sure that we are operating as efficiently as we can. And also taking a look at our pay schedule. Our pay schedule right now has a list of our positions, but our pay grades are going from a scale of 1 to almost 23. And that's not how our pay schedule should be designed. So we really are excited to have a vendor to really be able to come in and make sure that the recommendations that they are providing is commensurate to what our mission and our goals here are in the city of Fairburn.
And members of council, before I take any questions for you, let me just mention why we're going this route. This, as recent as this morning, a conversation I had with a local mayor in the county as relates to the issues that they were having with retention. I had to explain to this mayor in great detail that this mayor needs to understand that you're losing great managers because of a combination of between salaries, benefits, and what it call, I guess, fringe benefits technically. And so I even had to explain to this mayor that you're going to continue to lose great staff if you don't have the conversation coincidentally we were having tonight. And I mentioned to him, I said, I don't know, you can listen in if you want to, but I would advise you right now, as Fairburn is gonna have to look at right now the number of people that we've lost between January and today. Firefighters and police officers are leaving left and right. I'm talking about management. So we're losing institutional knowledge, which is a critical problem for us because of the time it takes, number one, to train and then actually bring it on board the person. And now I'm stuck with I'm stuck with a bunch of privates and no sergeants. Excuse that terminology, but that's the best way I can describe it. And so I even had to explain to this particular mayor that policies such as take-home vehicles, fringe benefits that you're now going to have to consider as a result of the workforce, i.e. Amazon literally offering massive amount of money, hourly pay, and we're losing, and I said we're losing employees to, for us, we're losing employees to other governments because of just strictly, and I'll even go as far as to say one, if I'm right, Mr. City Man, was it a firefighter or police officer that wrote a real nice exit memo? Police officer wrote, said the work environment, he couldn't imagine it could be this good, but he couldn't turn down the massive amount of money he was about to be offered. And so, and I say all that because again, our culture, we've been able to just turn the corner culture-wise, but we've got to turn the culture from a pay perspective, and that happens as a result of a pay and steady, which will put us at least within the standard market practice. I'll say this, and I'll conclude and take any questions. I know of another agency, and again, the reason I'm so happy about Ms. Champagne and with her qualifications, because there's another agency that actually did the very same thing, and as a result of not having and I'm just gonna say it as politically correct as I can, as a result of not having the proper credentials, it had the reverse effect. They lost, as a result of their study, they lost all their top management to other governments because, again, this particular agency said their pay was commensurate with standard market practice, which was completely bogus. And so I say that because, again, this is something we have to address, and we have to address it like yesterday. So.
I do want to quickly add before your questions that to echo from our city administrator, he has mentioned in council meetings before how the city is growing. And for us to really be able to keep up with the growth of the city, our hiring practices and things of that nature, we want to make sure that our job descriptions, that our pay equity are in place. I can just say that the class and comp study is just a first step. We still have other things, the processes and procedures that we will have to put in place to standardize those and make sure that things such as compression, which we are currently dealing with right now, it's just a fancy term for salary inequities. We want to be able to deal with that, but we want to minimize that, and the class and comp study is the first step to do that.
Ms. Davis?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Again, I want to commend the leadership, Mr. Phillips, in understanding how critical this study is. Sometimes we look at the front end cost of doing something, and we don't look at the back end cost of not doing it. And I've owned a staffing company for 10 years, so I know how critical this is and how productive it is. And it's also going to be, because in reality it costs more to rehire really than to train. So, and not only that, I think it's going to tremendously have a very positive impact on morale with our employees. It's not going to be about who you know, where you came from, how much you're going to get paid. So that is just, I welcome it. I take my, well, I don't have a hat on, but if I did, I'd take my hat off to you, because this is very critical. And thank you for your leadership in doing these things that's going to really have a tremendous impact, positive impact on our staff and their production. Thank you.
Mr. Pallett?
Yeah, I don't have a question as much as I'm making a statement. In the end, you get what you pay for, and we are well on our way to becoming a very interesting place going forward. But we need staff, well-trained staff, capable staff, to accomplish that mission.
Any other member of the council?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to echo what both my colleagues have said regarding this. Pay is definitely an issue. We want to be competitive in the marketplace. But I am equally interested in the benefits that we offer. You use the word holistic, and I'd like to see how you define that and what that means in terms of everything that we offer our employees. Yes, pay is a very strong carrot, if you will, but that gets the employees here, but that doesn't necessarily keep them here, right? And so we really need to make sure that we're providing those things that the employee needs for retention. Okay, so I look forward to seeing that.
To your point, Mayor Pro Tem, I use the word holistic because oftentimes when you hear the word compensation study, you're thinking about just pay. And I don't want that perception to be associated with our class and comp study. Our class and comp study is not just looking at pay, it's looking at compression, it's looking at making sure that our salaries are equitable. It's looking at our classifications. It's looking at the essential functions of each of our classifications. It's looking at how our organization is structured. It's looking at how every department is structured. And that may mean new classifications, job titles, pay changes, essential functions updates, things of that nature. Now, when I also mentioned that this is just the first step, there are other things that we are also putting into play as it relates to the Human Resources Department in conjunction with the City Administration Office, as it relates to other incentives, take-home vehicles, education incentives, looking at our benefits. So those are things that we are working on as well.
Okay, and I'd also like to ask that you think about succession. because with the large void that we have now, that history has left, and if we had had a succession plan in place, we would not be impacted as much regarding that.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add, thank you, Ms. Champagne, for the leadership in this area. Oh, I'm sorry.
Before you go out here, Mr. Whitmore had one comment.
Sir.
If you don't mind, then I'll come to you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Ma'am, we definitely appreciate your presentation and what you're looking at doing. Of course, without our employees, we can't achieve anything. So looking at it and taking that holistic approach, looking at everything from pay, benefits, the whole 9 yards, it's going to pay dividends in the long run. It may hurt initially, but it's going to pay dividends in the long run, so we don't lose good personnel going to other cities. So thank you for what you are bringing forth, and looking forward to hear that final report.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Whitmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to again thank Ms. Champagne for her leadership in this area, and we're looking forward to the results of this. What I would tell you is that our office comes in every day focused on one single thing, and that is providing the best possible services to every resident of Fairburn. What my experience has shown me is that the best thing I can do to ensure that is to create the best possible staff for the city of Fairburn. And that means not only pay, because you make a very good point, Mayor Pro Tem, it's about work culture as well. I think we've gotten off to a really good start. We firmly believe in our administration of treating people fairly and equitably and created a positive work environment. Retaining people right now is very difficult. And so we have to look at class and comp studies, of course, because if there's a pay disparity, it's hard to keep people. But you're 100% correct. It's not solely about that. And so we work every day to build the type of culture that people will want to work in Fairburn. Fairburn is going to become the it place to work, and that's our goal. We want to build the right package, but also the right culture where people feel like they're appreciated. I got a call this afternoon from an 18-year resident of Fairburn. Her name is Maria Henry. She told me I could mention her name. And she called and left a voicemail to thank our entire utility department. She wanted to talk about the customer service, how it's always consistent, how she's always gotten good service. She recently had a death in the family. They made some adjustments to work with her through that process. And so that's just one anecdotal experience, but we're headed in the right direction, building the type of culture. I want to commend the utility department, our director, Mr. Martin, there in the back, and all of the staff for doing a wonderful job. But that's just one example of what we want to see on a daily basis. So it's about work culture, and all of these pieces play together so that we can make Fairburn the best place to work. And when we do that, we'll be able to provide the type of world-class service to all of the residents in the city.
Okay, and I also, when you said that, it reminded me, so to really empower, strongly empower our employees to make suggestions, to take initiative. So you talked about processes, Ms. Champagne.
Yeah.
That's part of one of them, that they should not be afraid to speak up and say something when they see something that's wrong, or that it could be done better, or that's a safety issue. So I'm really encouraged by that, both from you, from Ms. Chris, and from Mr. Phillips. So please continue that. Thank you.
And I'll close with the statement as it relates to again one of a conclusion with actually the mayor this morning was that as we go through our efforts to assess pay and benefits, the whole 9 yards, at the end of the day, and this mayor, I'm sure already knew that. I said one of the things that I'm asking our managers to do, in this case our city administrator, assistant city administrator, the situation we have is actually twofold. It's not just about proper pay to keep good people. It's also about maintaining proper service levels so that the people that you do have, you're not killing them. And so, we, upon my arrival, I can say this because I said this during my state city address when I arrived, is that the number of people in the street department that was actually trying to take care of the whole city of Fairburn, I don't know how these people are still alive. And excuse that vernacular, but the workload was almost unbearable as it relates to the amount of work that had to be done versus the quantity of people that was actually responsible for doing it. And so that's why we have a job fair, I believe is advertised for
The 25th, on Wednesday.
On Wednesday, because we've got to get our service levels up like soon. So Thank you, thank members of council and the city administrator, Ms. Champagne, thank you so much. We've got about 8 minutes, and then we'll start our council meeting.